Speaking of shocking, how about deep brain stimulation? It's helped thousands of people battle Parkinson's disease for decades. And now researchers are hoping to use it to treat one of our biggest current crises, and that's addiction. You've got a study currently underway at West Virginia University that's looking at this. Multiple governmental and medical regulatory agencies are overseeing the trial in which 4 patients will get a stimulator implanted in their brains to see if this does indeed work. I want to bring on Leigh Richardson, licensed professional counselor. Leigh, does it work? I mean, what do you think about this?
Well, I think that it's got good and bad. I think it's kind of scary anytime you're implanting something in the brain. But addiction is pretty scary. I mean, I saw a statistic online, and I believe it, that 1 out of 2 people will relapse. And addiction is a brain disease, and it's very complicated. You know, we talk about how genetics impact the brain. Well, so do the epigenetics. You know, what's going on in the environment. So it's something I think that addiction we're desperate. We have got to come up with some help. Well, and it is a brain disease.
Well, this study is currently underway at West Virginia University. And here's what one of the doctors says. It says it's a complex illness involving brain circuits, genetics, the environment, and a person's life experiences. Are these non-invasive ways to treat addiction by Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, I use neurofeedback in my practice every day.
Mm-hmm.
And neurofeedback, there's a study that goes back to 1989, the Peniston study, that used neurofeedback to treat addiction. In 2005, UCLA came out with a bigger study. So there are other ways that are less invasive to come at addiction. You know, when you come at it from an inpatient standpoint, you go through a detox. It's a process that you go through. So, yes, there are less invasive ways, but I was amazed. I looked at that study, and people were very quick to sign up. You know, put me in, coach. Put me in.
Mm-hmm. Look, you're talking to someone. We've done a number of interviews, and I'm not a believer that we're too quick to label stuff diseases. I mean, you say addiction's a disease. I say it's somebody that doesn't have discipline. It's somebody that, you know, I see too many people. It just seems like we have too many excuses in society. You know, the people you deal with, I mean, do you truly feel it's a disease? Do you think some people use that as an excuse? I mean, you see a lot more people than I do, obviously. What have you found over time?
Well, I tell you what I have found is people start they're self-medicating. They're using drugs to feel better, to perform better, to feel good. I don't think there's anyone out there that says, you know, I think I'm just going to become a drug addict. I don't think that's the way it works. I think people's brains respond differently. And, yeah, are there a lot of bad choices? Absolutely. And sometimes those bad choices start when they're very, very young. And that plays into it. So I can see your side of the line, but honestly, after working, and I've worked with people that have struggled with addiction,
mm-hmm.
and I honestly believe there's nobody out there that continues to use just to stay addicted. If they're continuing to use, they are self-medicating.
All right, let's go. I always like to go back in time. Like whenever I get into an argument about guns with people and people are like, okay, we got to get rid of guns. Look at all these mass shootings. And I say, look, guns were around in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. We didn't have mass shootings, so something changed. I'm going to say the same thing. I mean, we human beings have been around forever. You know, I didn't see all these addiction problems popping up in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Now, all of a sudden, everybody's addicted to something. And that's where I go back to, I don't believe it's a disease, because if it was a disease, why didn't we see all these addictions 50 years ago and 60 years ago? I think we're a very weak society that doesn't know how to handle their issues.
I think we're a very stressed society. I definitely agree with that. And anytime you get stressed, really, really stressed out, those adrenal glands start kicking out all that cortisol, and that can get into the gray and the white matter of the brain, and that can change the way the brain is working. I do agree with you. We are such a stressed-out society, and that does make us weak.
How do we change that? I mean, we're always going to have stress, Leigh. So, I mean, how do we get people to cope better or deal with I know when I stress, I go lift weights, or I go run, or I do things like that. I don't turn to alcohol. I don't turn to weed. I don't turn to coke. Why do so many people go down that road?
I think that one reason it's easy, I'm with you. I just left the gym. That is my go-to for my stress release, and actually it's my go-to for my feel good. But not everybody, that's their go-to. And what did you grow up seeing? If you grow up in a family of alcoholics where everybody drinks, or now they smoke it or they shoot it, and drugs are amazingly available. And part of our drug addiction problem starts when something happens to us. We get hurt. We get hurt on a job, or we're in a car accident, and we're given pain pills. That's where part of our addiction starts. We turn to a pharmaceutical society.
Right. There's no doubt that a lot of people, when it comes to injuries, get hooked on stuff and they can't get back off of it. But so are you just to wrap this interview up, are you skeptical of this study going on at WVU, or do you think that it could provide a lot of help to a lot of people?
I'm hopeful that it can provide a lot of help to a lot of people.
All right. Leigh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Leigh Richardson, she's a licensed professional counselor.